ASKA scandal abusia former Paul CEO Asante Kweku Belkon abusia sese am no ekasa ma ne boni echemu echese papa yi ehyemu ewo ye US prison 13 years solid na abusia ansana ye de papa be kwa kwatum no it is alleged say papa yi e can say otuatua bribe Emma eye some eye MPs 1 million bribe e de ma some eye MP bi ewo eye omega na ha abusia sisi me no weka say aba beto bia say sesere John Dramani Mahama ultimately order eye attorney general with immediate effect so ombomodea so omoba investigate ahwehwe ehun saa enkofokuo we saa NPC abusia omudi apie mu say omoje bribe of eye $1 million na abusia yemfeshi omo outemra sisi a we de mema mekasa wa mekasa enye tete pese ya ayeko na yetie ensem mu akasa enchire mu yes omo e call say sesa MPC ni na no ye fish omo out na chese so omo de se Ghana ha na ebejelu omo na ejelu omo yetumi enjelu omo so Ghana tempa na chese ya extra de to omo no makopie mu wa US makoka eye Asante Kweku Belkon ho abusia ene de MPP ene eye some MPs bi wo ha chese ena na dwudi ya de ombeda yenko na yentie na yeche ya dwema sese ha era so aye be media yeche be so wase ene de connect channel so ni de no go kwan share be so subscribe like na wa bo so share Mahama PROBES be tie no anya bi atie yenko na yetie alleged issue ya aba mountain say Excellency John Dramani Mahama ama order say yenhwehwem na che say sa MPC a omo eje $1 million bribe no yemfa omo emra ni no yetie ni na masese a yeda
well,
because it looks like instructions have been given by the president to the attorney general. Deal with the officials who will be culpable. What's your own opinion so far?
Well, we have a president that we can trust. A president who abhors corruption. A president who wants to make sure that we sanitize the system. That's why we came in with the manifesto of resetting agenda. I mean, to reset the country. I mean, resetting the country doesn't necessarily mean building the rules and other things, but to reset our own mindset, the way we do things. I mean, corruption is, I would describe it as a murder to development. I mean, if you look at corruption, that's how I describe it. It's a murder to development. It's one of the things that has brought us to our knees in this country over the years. Now, and this is the president who has taken it upon himself to deal with it. You remember when he was in office then in 2015-26, his own appointee, who was then heading at that time it was called GDAP. Yes, he didn't mince words in dealing with when the matter came to head at that time. I mean, so this is the president, when he says something, he meant it. He's going to do it and he's going to deal with it. So as soon as this matter came up, he quickly instructed the Attorney General to go in. You know, there's one thing, I'm happy counsel is here, and he will tell you, U.S. courts has no jurisdiction in Ghana.
That is true.
Very clear, and we must make it very clear. So whatever transpired at the U.S. courts is different from what will happen in Ghana. And then so our municipal legal system doesn't extend to the U.S. judicial system. And then so when we are dealing with matters like this, we must be very clear in our mind. We have our own constitution, it's a sovereign country. And then so when matters of that nature happens at the U.S. court, and they got conviction, now they mentioned that Ghanaian officials and other things were bribed. In fact, it wasn't specific. I read the ruling very well. They didn't mention names, those officials who were bribed and other things. They just said Ghanaian officials at that time were bribed. And even went further to mention Parliament. That some $46,000 was used in the facilitation of the jail in court, this in Parliament at that time. All these things. And you remember what happened in those period and all that. And then the president said, no, we have to deal with the matter. Let's find out. Let's collaborate with the U.S. authority to get names, those officials involved, so that we can also use our legal system here to deal with people like that.
Because it's jurisdiction based.
It's jurisdiction based.
Why are you invoking the subject matter of jurisdiction in this scandal?
Oh no, it's very clear. Because you see, when you commit a crime within our jurisdiction, we use our legal system to deal with it. Okay, and although we have an extradition pact with US, okay, that one there is very clear. But when you commit a crime, and looking at the thing, the crime so committed was done within our system here, and then exported out to the Turkish land. So the Turkish government will also be dealing with matters of that nature, because ASKA is from Turkey.
If they want to.
If they want to, that area. But because the US government got conviction over this matter, we cannot so moto just transfer that matter to Ghana and say, okay, those involved, let's go and look for them and dump them in Sawan prison. You cannot do that. You have to also look at our legal system, our criminal justice system, and deal with matters of that nature. And then so government is spot on this matter and is going to deal with it. We are not going to allow. Don't forget, the chief architect, Mr. Beku, shortly after 2016, when NPP came into office, you know, they appointed him to,
I think around 2020.
Yes, thereabout. He was working with them.
Why is that important?
Oh, no, I'm saying that because they felt that the man has some expertise in the energy sector, right? Felt that he could help them because his experience, he worked with gold sites over the period and all that. So they felt that he had those kind of experiences that will help them deal with energy problems and all. And so he was appointed to. And another thing. So you see, it's an officer that is like, we say it's a double-edged sword. Okay. He's a double-edged sword officer that he has the expertise, he has the knowledge, well grounded, well educated and all that. But the other side of it is where the US government was so much particular about, which they found that he was not using his knowledge that he needed to use to help, but to help corrupt officials and get away with certain deals. And then so we will deal with it as a government. We'll make sure that we get and you trust the Attorney General, this current Attorney General, Minister of Justice. He's very meticulous when it comes to matters of this nature. He will pursue it with a letter, and he will make sure that all those involved in it will be dealt according to the laws of this country. That is what I can say for now.
Compliance ethics procedures, which have governed international companies of such repute. And we've seen that in the Airbus scandal as well. There are even EU laws on compliance and how officers of such entities need to operate internationally. And we've seen the same situation. Could it be that by way of our own behavior, Mr. Beko, Ghanaian origin, of course, may have US citizenship, etc., haven't gone to school there, knows that before you get matters closed when it comes to financial deals, you need to part. So somebody will argue that 46,000 to a committee of mines and energy, and the committee is made up of a chair, ranking, and then we have others. Sometimes they number up to about 15, depending on the type of committee as well, could number up to 12, representing various facets of the house. That could directly not be within our own social-cultural means, bribe, so to speak. And that's saying, how do we situate that within our context? And then the context of international law, and then jurisdiction.
So let me wish your lovely viewers a good morning once again. There's a narrative that is going around that I vehemently disagree with. That narrative that seems to suggest that bribery and corruption is part of our culture. And usually we use a very vile and disrespectful and unfortunate example that when we go to a chief's house, or when we go to the palace, we present drinks. And I think if you follow international norms and cultures and practices everywhere in the world, when you are going to visit somebody of repute, whether the person is a Ghanaian, the person is British, and vice versa, you take, there's some pleasantries that you ought to undertake. And I think this is something that is done all over the world. And it does not, for me, show that we have a culture in this country that borders on corruption. Ghanaians don't have a culture of corruption and dishonesty. Now, two, for me, I want us to try very hard not to make this discussion a discussion that is based on partisanship.
Not NPP and DC?
No, because
Why?
then when we do that, then we lose sight of a big problem, which in my view has become endemic. And that's the problem of corruption. Because for me, I think that the significance of this case is not simply that a former international investment banker, a former MD of TOR, has been convicted of offenses involving bribery and money laundering. I think the real significance is what this case tells us about Ghana. It's what this case tells about corruption in our country. It's what it tells us about the vulnerability of our institutions. What it tells us about our political culture. What it tells us probably about the culture of impunity that's certain insofar as corruption is concerned. To this end, the central theme of the discussion here, or my view, is that corruption is now a disease. And impunity is what makes corruption endemic. And I think that what the Bekun case does is that it provides us with evidence about this disease that's destroying the very fiber of our Ghanaian society. Now, we ought to understand that Bekun was indicted in 2020 on 3 counts. He was indicted on 3 counts, conspiracy to violate the FCPA of the USA, actually violating it, and conspiracy to commit money laundering. We ought to understand this. Now, for me, the question that we need to ask ourselves is not whether or not somebody was accused of bribing Ghanaian officials. I think the question is, what does a successful prosecuted international bribery scheme involving multiple Ghanaian public officials tells us about the condition of our public institutions? Because you see, when you understand this case, and when you understand the architecture here, an architecture whose focus is to entrench the principle of probity and accountability, as has been stated in our constitution, creates an architecture whose focus is to give controls, to provide controls, so that when the public interest will be protected, so that issues that borders on this disease, the disease of corruption, will be limited. And to that end, when government is undertaking a contract, there are different levels of approvals. So, first of all, we have the cabinet level approvals. We have Parliament must ratify the contract. You understand? In fact, before the contract, the minister itself must be there are some kind of procedures that must be had. Indeed, technocrats are tasked to go outside and inspect.
From the oversight ministry.
Yeah, as in they must go and inspect. Now, what are we being told? We are being told that the technocrats who are tasked to go and inspect the subject matter of a contract that is of a public interest nature, you understand, were bribed. They were alleged. They were. But they are no more. They are no longer allegations, because a court of competent jurisdiction at least has established the factual premises of this issue, that they were given 5,000 USD. You understand? And why were they given this money? To influence, you understand, the report or their decision making in terms of the subject matter of a contract that, for all intents and purposes, is meant to solve a public need. So, contrary to what my brother here said, doing so was not created by His Excellency John Mahama. Doing so was a legacy issue that John Mahama had to deal with. You understand? As in, let's try and take partisanship out so we can deal with the issue. Also, what's called the official one issue, I think, was comprehensively dealt with by the OSP, and His Excellency was cleared. However, in spite of all this, what this case tells us is that, in spite of the safeguards that we have created, so that the interest of the public will be protected, technocrats, and I'm not sure they are politicians, The technocrats who went to inspect.
It's even possible that the minister even never encountered any of these discussions at any point in time.
But the technocrats who went to inspect, who pocketed a cool $5,000 each. They are not meant to be politicians. They are technocrats. Yes, and if the fact says that they are politicians, they should. And yet they took monies to influence what's it called their decision in a matter that has a huge public interest. At that time, we were going through a serious crisis that impacted the economies of this country, that impacted lives of the citizens of this country to unrecognizable effect. And yet, Ghanaians, people who had been trained by this country, who had been given the hallowed tax, you understand, of safeguarding public interest, went and took $5,000 USD to influence their decision. Then the saddest bit is our parliamentarians. Because when you understand constitutional democracy, and the focus of constitutional democracy is to limit the powers of government so that the interests of the people can best be safeguarded. And they are not, this case is not saying that our parliament is necessarily corrupt. But the committee members, because we know that one of the critical means in which parliament delivers its function of checking, or serving as a check and balance on the executive, is through the committees. So we have a committee on energy, power energy. Now the committee does not have a partisan coloring. It involves both minority members and majority members. The committee.
NppMPs.
Yeah, so when you take the committee, because the way in which Parliament undertakes its function of checking the executive is through the committees. So we have various committees. In this case, I'm sure the committee will be the committee on mines, energy.
Yeah, it's the committee on mines and energy.
And I'm saying that committee is not a partisan committee; it's a bipartisan committee. So it involves both NPP and NDC members. And yet, we are being told that 46,000 USD was shared among members of the committee. You understand? Now the question is, did this money, you understand, influence the decision of the committee? Did it?
Can it?
Did it?
Maybe it's transport.
You see, now, whether it did or it did not, the point is that we can come to a firm conclusion that at the end they took monies and passed a contract, which for like 8 years now, we've been debating, at least take or pay contract. Yes. Did they kneel to our benefit? You get the picture. And then we are also told that the minister of power at that time was the subject matter of discussions that concerned granting him at least 1 million USD.
Yeah.
Very clear. Very clear. Now, we are being told that Ghanaian authorities, the Office of the Special Prosecutor, the Attorney General, aided the US government in undertaking these investigations and prosecutions. That's what we are told, not so. And I'm saying the indictment began from 2020. Now, right from 2020, if what we are being told is true, then the Ghanaian official, mandated by Constitution to be the vanguard of the principles of probity and accountability, you understand? And the special body that Ghanaians agreed and we created so that we could have fair and non-partisan prosecution, you understand, took part in the investigations that led to this conviction since 2020. And yet we are in 2026 and we are seated here and we are going to attempt to have a debate as to who was a conspirator, Ghana official number 1. You know, there was a number 1, there was a number 4.
Up to number 5 or
so. You understand? And we are going to pretend that we do not know, but yet we are being told that the Attorney General, the OSP, the vanguards of the principles of probity and accountability took part in efforts that ultimately led to the securing of this conviction. So for me, the bigger question is, this evil that was done, really, the biggest victims are the people of Ghana. You understand? We are the biggest, because it's not about somebody paying, somebody receiving. Why did they pay and why was it received? There was a payment, there was a reception to influence the procurement of, or the creation of something that was going to deal with a public interest issue here in Ghana. And yet, the USA, which for all intents and purposes are the minor victim here. Their only interest is that they don't want businesses that involves the USA to be tainted by corruption. And yet, they have shown commitment to these, to those values by convicting Beko. Now we the victims, we are the victims. We are saddled with a take or pay contract. We were saddled with doing so. We are saddled with this disease of corruption. And what has been our attitude towards this? We claim that we help the USA. In fact, they themselves said that the OSP helped them, that Attorney General helped them. And yet we are sitting here this morning and we are going to pretend that we don't know the persons involved. We are going to turn this into a partisan argument. NPP did this, NDC did this. That's not, we are going to behave in a manner that will entrench the impunity that makes corruption a disease. And we knew, or we ought to know, because since 2020, when it was indicted, Ghana has aided the USA in securing this conviction. You understand? So listen, I think a fundamental lack of commitment towards fighting corruption, a fundamental lack of commitment towards the right political culture that will secure us the promises of democracy, a lack of commitment in building the right constitutional culture, understand, that will deliver for us the promise of democracy, has been brought bare, has been stripped naked by the issue in Bekun's case. To think that we can even have a thought that the amounts involved were what, $5,000 and $46,000, and so they constitute TNT. You understand? Exposes the canker of corruption in this country. Now let's even go deeper. Now you see, there was a grand scheme. So right now, corruption has gone beyond the envelope under the table. You remember the words of Nanado? The envelope under the table, when he espoused the principle of the Hatarization of the city. He said some envelope under the table. And now corruption has gone beyond an envelope under the table. Now corruption has reached a stage where it now entails companies being formed, invoices being created, the use of the words holy rain. Was it holy rain?
Yes, holy rain.
Holy rain. Pour upon our heads. Holy rain. The irony of it. The irony of it. Holy rain. Holy rain. But that's how sophisticated corruption has become. You understand? And corruption has become this sophisticated. And it has become a disease because right now it's taken or is done with impunity. Because the constitutional culture in this country tells me that as to whether or not somebody is corrupt or not depends on their political coloring. We don't want a system where a government sponsored by, let's say, the NPP comes to office and all the people being chased for corruption and corruption-related matters are NDC. We don't want a country where NDC comes to power and all the people being chased for corruption are NPP. If our commitment is to build a country that's premised on our constitutional values, chief amongst which is the principle of probity and accountability, then when an NPP person commits an offense or commits corruption, then the system must go after it. Where an NDC person commits corruption, the system must go after him. Where a UP man commits corruption, then the system must go after it. We need to create a right constitutional culture. We need to show commitment to the values stated clearly in our constitution. Beko has exposed Ghana. 6 years. He's been indicted, he's been convicted. He was aided, the said conviction was aided by officers in Ghana. And here, right now, we are going to sit down and pretend that we do not know. You see, corruption is a disease, like I said, but it is impunity is what makes this disease endemic. And until Ghana confronts the culture of impunity with the same determination with which we create anti-corruption laws and institutions, we will continue treating the symptoms while allowing the disease to survive. The Beko Convention has exposed the problem. The question now is whether Ghana has the institutional courage to confront it.
You think we have the balls to do that?
Well, Roland, thank you very much for having me, and very good morning to my co-panelists and to the good people of Sabuba. In fact, I want to take off where my good brother ended. You see, corruption have not only become endemic, it has.
So abusuan we ne ensema ekọ so our political highway so ASKA scandal HSA energy ministry power plant and KSA de be PM Ghana bribery and corruption cases ekọ so no ehonsem na ye de ebramase samaje penekokoti ensem we edema Ghana politics avenue so abum na asanso esi ebo so ebramase samaje penekokoti